So when the Europeans came over, they started trading fur with the Indians, and they traded other items too, but it was called the fur trade. The Indians used fur to trade for tools, guns, cloth, etc. This is all the things that they didn't have.
You take drum and fur. Give me gun.
Over time, Native Americans were forced onto reservations. This was a piece of land that was set aside for the Native Americans, and only for them. They had limited governmental rule, and the living conditions were not very good. Because of this, they were faced with disease and alcoholism brought from the Europeans.
Captain Richard Henry Pratt was the first director of Carlisle Indian Industrial School.
So he was the one that said kill the Indian in him and save the man?
Yes, Pratt advocated total immersion of Indian youth and white culture at Carlisle and other boarding schools.
So before they started sending the Native American children to boarding schools, they tried to teach them, right? As adults.
Yeah, they tried to teach the adults first, and we have exclusive footage of that.
Hello, students. Today we are learning about the Christian religion. There are Lutherans, there are Catholics, and there are Mormons, and many others. There are not 7 gods, there are not 3, and there are not 4, but 1. He is in the form of a man, but not a squirrel or a dog. He is the source of all power, and we call him the Almighty One. And he is all powerful, and he will kill us all if we do not listen to him.
No, that's
Hey,
a lie!
sit down.
You did-
So, as we can see, this proved unsuccessful. Their focus then switched to the children.
So the boarding schools made it so that they could be separated from home and the reservation, right?
Many Native American Indian parents would try and hide their children, but this rarely worked.
Where are the children?
They're not here, they left.
Liar. I see you.
No!
So the children, they were forced to go to boarding school. What's the good to this story?
But there was a positive side. When the children were forced to go to the boarding schools, they rebelled by speaking their own language with friends or at night, just whenever they could.
Just check.
So, besides the boarding schools, what other ways did the government try to assimilate the Indian children into?
Well, they had the outing system, and this was very successful. They would send the children home. Well, send the children with families year round, with white families, and they would go to the local public schools with their non-Indian siblings. And some Native Americans children liked the families they were with and wanted to stay.
Puma, come with me.
No, I want to stay.
When the Native American children got to the boarding schools, there was many things that they had to do. Many of which were not very pleasant. One of which was that they had to cut their hair, which was traumatic for them.
Wasn't cutting their hair a symbol of mourning and sickness?
Yeah. Next.
So another problem they had was they took their clothes and they gave them stiff wool to wear, and they burnt their old clothes. Another thing is they took their Indian names and changed or gave them white English names.
So, from now on, Indians, you'll be wearing these rags. You'll be wearing the standard issue. And from now on, Blackfoot, you'll be known as Bob Builder. And you, a ball, will be known as Dora Explorer.
Dora,
What
Explorer.
kind of name is Bob Builder? If we
Standard
can't have
issue.
our own names, give us something better.
World War II began with the attack on Pearl Harbor. With the beginning of World War II beginning, it awoken an ancestral warrior spirit within many Native Americans. Many Native Americans were drafted into this war, but even more than that, there was many volunteers. Many were passionate about going to war that they even would wait in the rain just to be enlisted. Many sick and afflicted Native Americans would try to enlist but were put down because they were not healthy enough.
Sir, you're too unhealthy. You can't even run. You can't fight in the war.
I don't need to run. I came here to fight.
So even though the management of the Indian affairs by the government was awful, the Indians jumped to the opportunity to fight the white man's war. It was a great show of loyalty towards the Americans. Many Native Americans went to the effort to learn a few English phrases, how to write their name. And this was just in the great effort to enlist. But those who didn't enlist also helped on the home front. They bought war bonds and treasury stamps. They also gave generous donations to the Red Cross. There were also women who took over the male jobs, such as lumberjack, mechanic, farmers. They also helped by canning food, looking after livestock, and sewing uniforms.
Here, eat.
So uniform. So uniform.
Leave it on. Also, to the war help, they were called the Code Talkers. It started out with Philip Johnston, who was the son of a Protestant, and they lived in with the Navajo tribe. And when he heard about the issues they were having with sending coded messages, and either they were broken too quickly or they were just so hard to break for the people that they were sending them to that that took them hours. So he had just the answer. The Navajo language is very hard to learn. You have to be exposed to it from a young age. And so he suggested using the Navajo language to create a code. And that became, a small band of warriors became the Navajo speakers, and they created a code that was unbreakable. So the Code Talkers, their military terms tended to resemble the things which they were associated with. They could also be literal terms or metaphorical terms. The English words that didn't have any association terms or associated terms could be spelled out using Navajo words that represented letters of the alphabet.
Chadegat, tortoise.
Take, got it.
Beshlo, ironfish.
Submarine, got it.
Nihema, our mother.
Message from America, got it.
So after the war, there was a constant struggle, well, even before that, there was a constant struggle to revive lost language and a struggle to restore pride in their heritage, which many were forced to forget. After the war, the Indians were less important. Communism was coming about, and they set aside the Indian affairs and worried about communism. The United States citizens discriminated against the Native Americans. They had a specific stereotype for them. Ever since the arrival of the Europeans, the American Indians have been generalized in writing, movies, photographs, music, sports, and television. American Indians are supposed to look, talk, and act like they are shown in the media, on horses chasing buffalo, and having the same dress and speech as in the 1800s. Another issue the Indians had to deal with after post-war was housing. They had cramped housing, and many families were poor and unemployed.
So as kind of to wrap up what we've covered so far, the Native Americans did go through many ordeals and they had many problems, but there were a few upsides to the situation. They were able to get an education. They don't have to stay on reservations. They can go get jobs. They can be normal people. And one more thing to add in is they had rights.